the Bible, that ancient tome of wisdom and, well, interesting stories, tells us quite plainly in Psalm chapter 14, verse 1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. And just for good measure, Romans chapter 1, verse 22 chimes in with, professing to be wise, they became fools. So if you're an atheist, especially an ex-Christian like me, you're not just a non-believer. You're apparently a special kind of idiot who thinks they're smart. Thanks, ancient texts. Really feeling the love here. Now, as someone who spent a good chunk of my life navigating that particular belief system, I find this accusation simultaneously hilarious and deeply frustrating. Because here's the kicker. While Christians are often quick to weaponize these verses to dismiss anyone who dares to question their cosmic landlord, they seem less eager to ask some of the more inconvenient questions that naturally arise from their own foundational claims. Think about it for a second. We're talking about an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-present deity, the big boss, the ultimate architect, the CEO of the cosmos. So why, pray tell, would this magnificent, universe-creating entity need a bunch of us puny, flawed humans to convince other puny, flawed humans of his existence? Isn't that a bit like Elon Musk needing me to stand on a street corner with a cardboard sign saying, Teslas exist? I swear! It just doesn't track. If God is real, truly all-powerful, and desperately wants everyone to know about him, why the elaborate game of cosmic hide-and-seek? Why not just, show up? A quick heavenly Instagram live, perhaps? A divine billboard in the sky? A gentle whisper in every single human ear, undeniable and clear? Nah. Instead, we get a several thousand-year-old game of telephone that eventually became a book. One that, let's be honest, has more plot holes than a Swiss cheese factory. And while we're on the subject of this all-powerful God, why does he need his followers to make excuses for his supposedly cruel behaviors as described in the very book they claim is his word? We're talking about events that, if attributed to any human leader, would have us screaming crimes against humanity from the rooftops. Genocides, plagues, the drowning of pretty much the entire world population, save for one boatload of animal hoarders. Yet it's always, but God works in mysterious ways, or his justice is different from ours. It feels less like divine wisdom and more like a celestial PR team working overtime to spin an utterly indefensible narrative. If the creator of all reality is so perfect, why does he need us to constantly apologize for his alleged actions? It's like having a friend who keeps punching people and then demanding you explain why his fists are actually instruments of peace. And then there's the masterpiece itself, the Bible. If God truly wanted to expose himself to all of humanity, why would he rely on humans to write a book for him? Humans known for their impeccable memories, lack of biases, and total immunity to embellishment, right? It just adds another layer of baffling complexity to an already convoluted story. It's like a world-renowned chef hiring a bunch of toddlers to write his Michelin star cookbook. Makes perfect sense. Of course, the landscape of our understanding has shifted dramatically since these ancient texts were penned. Back in the day, before we had fancy things like microscopes, telescopes, and the internet, it was only natural to look at the vast, mysterious world around us and think, well, something must have made all this. A divine clockmaker? A cosmic wizard? A giant space hamster on a wheel? Take your pick. But now we have science. Glorious, inquisitive, fact-finding science. As the brilliant Stephen Hawking once wrote, and I'll quote, "It is not necessary to invoke God to light the blue touch paper and set the universe going." End quote. And he wasn't wrong. Science has provided us with increasingly detailed and elegant explanations for how the universe came to be, how life evolved, and how pretty much everything works, without needing to insert a magical beardy man in the sky. We can trace cosmic origins back to the Big Bang, understand the principles of evolution, and even glimpse the quantum weirdness that underpins reality. Does this disprove God? Not necessarily, in the sense that science has no way to stick God under a microscope or blast him with a particle accelerator. But it certainly makes him feel, unnecessary. Like a beautifully designed, incredibly complex machine that simply doesn't require a ghost in the gears. Christians often try to explain this away by saying, but God is outside space and time. It's a remarkably convenient phrase, isn't it? It means God is beyond our scientific instruments, our logical frameworks, our very understanding. He's so utterly transcendent that he can't be observed, measured, or replicated, which coincidentally also means he can't be proven. And let's be clear, this idea of God being outside space and time is a theological construct, a philosophical workaround developed long after the Bible was written to explain away why this all-powerful being remains so stubbornly undetectable. You won't find that phrase explicitly stated in the Bible itself. It's a post hoc justification, a bit of intellectual duct tape to patch up the growing holes in a rapidly evolving worldview. The only real evidence Christians have for God's existence and who he supposedly is remains that same book, the Bible. While Muslims have the Quran and Jews have the Torah, these are all collections of ancient texts. The Bible was written by multiple authors, passed down and translated over centuries. And honestly, the Bible is riddled with inconsistencies, inaccuracies, and contradictions. It's a pick-your-own-adventure story where the ending often depends on which verses you decide to emphasize. And let's not even get started on miracles. Oh, the glorious, scientifically inexplicable miracles. The parting seas, the walking on water, the loaves and fishes that multiply like rabbits on steroids. These aren't historical events. They're fairy tales, pure and simple. Because guess what? Miracles, by their very definition, cannot be scientifically proven. If they could, they wouldn't be miracles. They'd just be extremely rare natural phenomena. Think about it. A miracle experience might just be false information, a fictional story that got legs, or maybe it's due to cognitive errors. Our brains are amazing, but also prone to all sorts of biases and tricks. We can jump to conclusions, overthink, or see patterns where none exist. Or perhaps it's psychological errors. like hallucinations, etc. Ever heard of people seeing things after a really rough night or an intense emotional experience? And let's not forget the delightful influence of certain substances. As a side note, historical accounts of religious experiences sometimes sound remarkably similar to the effects of naturally occurring psychedelics that ancient peoples might have encountered. So, perhaps what some interpret as a divine encounter was just a really, really interesting mushroom trip. Just saying. So here we are in the 21st century, armed with knowledge, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of skepticism. Shouldn't we be curious? Shouldn't we be asking the hard questions about such a colossal belief system as Christianity, or any other religion for that matter? Shouldn't we be doing the research, digging into the historical contexts, examining the scientific evidence, and seeking real answers to the questions we have, instead of being told what we should believe to be true? That's exactly what many of us atheists, especially those who are ex-Christian, like myself, have done. We've done the research. We've read the books, not just one. We've consulted the experts, examined the evidence, and asked the uncomfortable questions. And after all that, we've come to a pretty solid conclusion. There's simply no compelling reason to believe that a God, as the Bible portrays him, actually exists. And for this, for daring to use our brains and ask why, the Bible calls us fools. The very book that Christians claim as the ultimate truth for proving God's existence is the same one that disparages anyone who goes through the effort of actually researching the matter beyond its own pages. They often rely solely on what they've been taught since childhood, clinging to the Bible as their reference, rarely asking the questions that really need asking. If science ends up going against something in the Bible, then suddenly the goalposts move, the excuses flow, and scientific evidence is conveniently denied or reinterpreted to fit the pre-existing belief. It's an intellectual cul-de-sac. But you know what? If being a fool means questioning the unquestionable, seeking truth over dogma, and embracing the vast wonders of a universe explained by science rather than ancient myth, then I'll proudly wear that jester's cap. Bring on the cap and bells, because this fool is having a much more honest and intellectually stimulating time than any person still clinging to ancient fairy tales. Okay, let's go on to the frequently asked questions. And when I go into the frequently asked questions, it's usually, questions that I perceive that you are going to ask me about the video. And so my answers to these perceived questions. So here's the frequently asked questions, the perceived questions I think you would ask about this, and my answers. Question number 1. What does the Bible mean by calling non-believers fools? My answer is the Bible, particularly in Psalm chapter 14, verse 1, and Romans chapter 1, verse 22, uses the term fool to describe those who deny God's existence or reject divine wisdom. From a theological perspective, it implies a moral and intellectual deficiency for failing to acknowledge what is considered self-evident truth about God. From a critical perspective, it's a dismissive label used to delegitimize opposing viewpoints without engaging them. Question number 2. How do atheists respond to the biblical claim that they are fools? My answer is that many atheists, particularly ex-Christians such as myself, view the label as an substantiated ad hominem attack. They often find it ironic, given that their disbelief is often the result of extensive research, critical thinking, and questioning, which they, including me, see as intellectually rigorous rather than foolish. The fool label is often seen as a way for believers to avoid deeper engagement with skeptical arguments. Question number 3. Why do critics argue that an all-powerful God wouldn't need human followers to convince others? My answer to that is the argument posits that if a deity is truly omnipotent and desires widespread belief, direct self-revelation would be the most efficient and undeniable method. Relying on flawed human intermediaries, ancient texts, and faith-based persuasion seems unnecessary and inefficient for an all-powerful being, raising questions about the true nature or existence of such a deity. Question number 4. What is the significance of the phrase, God is outside space and time, in this discussion? My answer is that this phrase is a common theological concept used to describe God's transcendence, meaning he exists beyond the physical universe and its dimensions. While intended to explain God's unprovability by scientific means, critics argue it's a convenient, non-biblical philosophical construct that effectively renders God untestable and unfalsifiable, allowing belief to persist without empirical evidence. Question number 5. Why are miracles seen as problematic evidence for God's existence from an atheist perspective? My answer, from a scientific and skeptical viewpoint, miracles are by definition events that defy natural laws, making them impossible to verify scientifically. Critically, accounts of miracles are often considered anecdotal, prone to exaggeration, misinterpretation, or even fabrication. Explanations like cognitive biases, psychological phenomena, for example, hallucinations, and etc., and the historical context of ancient beliefs, where natural phenomena were often attributed to divine action, are often offered as alternative interpretations to supernatural intervention. Now ends the question, the Q&A. So, for those of you out there who've walked away from faith, who deconstructed your beliefs, or who simply never bought into it in the first place, I want to hear from you. What was the one question, the one piece of information, or the one absurd claim that truly shattered your certainty? What was the aha moment that made you say, hold on a minute, this just doesn't add up? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's hear your stories of liberation from the label of fool. And if you enjoyed this little rant, please hit that like button, subscribe for more unholy insights, and share it with anyone else who might enjoy a good chuckle at the expense of outdated dogma. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and remember, it's perfectly okay to be a thinking fool. This is Kim McPhail, the Kim McPhail Podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I look forward to the next time we talk. Thanks for watching, and bye.